Thank you so much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Listening to those responses, we can immediately see that the answers are there. No matter which route we take, the rational, intuitive, or theological. And it poses far more questions. So it shows that there is this struggle within us to try and make sense, and somehow it is making sense in an odd way. But we are unable to articulate that response properly because it is not phrased accurately within a rational framework. Now, as we begin this session and begin to offer some clarity on the questions themselves, what we will do is we will raise more questions. And by the end of tomorrow, hopefully, we will all be utterly confused and find some direction in that confusion, yes? So now, our understanding of life determines our seriousness towards life. It determines the caliber of lives that we lead. If the notion of God making us from nothing, bringing us here, so on and so forth, if that is parked to one side, and in place of that, another idea begins to appeal to the mind that actually determines this life as being a huge gamble and a huge opportunity with huge stakes, everything, we are staking everything. It's a perilous path. If we make it for eternity. If we don't, then there is a possible damnation for eternity, and the meaning of reward and punishment is understood accurately, then every instance of this life would be led very differently to the way in which we lead it right now. As we go into this part of the discussion, I'm going to explain certain terms and then give an analogy and resort to theology to find some direction. You see, in the responses, we found two things. We found a struggle to justify our worldview. We don't want to know that this life is meaningless. We don't feel secure. We need to have some meaning that is driving life. In the last response, the atheist also constructs a meaning, a purpose to life, but at the exclusion of God. But we see the centrality of having a meaningful life. You said it is something innate. I would say let us question the meaning of innate, but we will park that for 1 minute, for a little while. But there is something there. So then there is a struggle. Do I now connect this sense of having a purpose in life with God or at the exclusion of God? And that is what we were seeing in the responses that were being offered. So I call this intuition. Intuitively, we somehow know things. But at a rational level, we are unable to frame it, phrase it, and then articulate it, or justify it and then speak about it. Failing that, we take recourse to our religious texts, and they give some meaning. But at the core of it still, there is this prodding thing. It must make sense, but how does it make sense? I know there is some purpose, I know there is some meaning, but I just can't understand how. I am led to believe the religious worldview to be accurate, but upon analysis, it doesn't seem to be very accurate. It doesn't seem to make much sense because I'm constantly having to justify it and struggle with it. That is where we are right now. So what is intuition? if we can just take notes on this. Intuition is that thing that appears prior to the process of thinking. Now, people describe intuition differently. I have a particular take on intuition that I want to explain now as we go into this part. What is reason? Reason is where we can calculate things. We have certain fundamentals that everybody needs to agree on through definitions or through observations. So now, if we were to accept the proposition that two opposites cannot unite in one place at the same time from the same angle, then this constitutes an axiom, a rational proposition that everybody has to agree upon. So water cannot be hot and cold at the same time. So this can be one way in which we construct rational arguments through primary axioms and then work through them and build them into more sophisticated propositions. The other way we can discuss rationally is, well, we say, look at this world. I ask, well, why ought I to speak the truth? Your response is, there is no other way. Why? Because otherwise we would have a community that would disintegrate, collapse, state of anarchy. There won't be survival of the human species. So if I say I will show up here at 9 o'clock, yes, and I mean to say that no, I will not show up at 9 o'clock. I was here at 8:45 for your information. It's because time is relative and I work 1 hour later than everybody else. That's the only thing. But I mean, when I say 9, it means my 9, okay. So if people can't trust each other, this society would collapse. In order to ensure the survival of the human community, we need to trust. And that's a rational argument. Or, why ought we to hold life sacred? Why can't we take life away? The answer is, well, that ensures the survival of the species. That's another form of rational argument. So when you say, but the Eskimos performed female infanticide, they did not value the sacredness of life. The rebuttal there is that because men were hunters, it was a hostile environment, and in order to ensure the survival of the whole species, they had to sacrifice the females. And therefore, it is a question of holding human life sacred at the expense of the sacrifice of a few human individuals. So, reason will still say life is sacred. I don't buy into this, yes? What I say is, no. Rational arguments, to me, make no sense until they are rooted deeply within intuition. Reason will always justify what is intuitively available. Yes? Reason's job is only to create a framework in which we can justify intuition. I ask a question. Think about this. Saying the truth is not necessarily good. Saying the truth has no value in itself. Can you see that? If a madman is looking out with an axe, let's say, is asking after me, you must lie. That lie is good. Okay, you can't say the truth, okay? So lie here is better than the truth. Why? If life was sacred, why have so much exceptions? Why is it that in the defense of the self, family, and the state, we are able to take life legitimately, and taking life is better than giving life in the case of those individuals? In the case of criminals, serial killers, putting them to death, taking a life away, is of more value, let us say, than giving life, you will see that there is no value in giving life in itself. There is no value in speaking the truth in itself. In that way, when you discern things, you will see that the rational arguments do not make sense until they are steeped into something else. I call this intuition. What is intuition? Intuition, I understand it to be, I'm going to use this term and then explain it. And for those people who've been listening, unfortunately, to whatever I've been saying, will know what it means, or who have been unfortunate enough to listen to whatever I've been saying. Intuition is rooted in what I call existence or existential properties. Existence has one salient property at the core of it. At least the existence that we observe, which is our yardstick of understanding. And we are a part and parcel of it. Existence is always liberating itself and allowing itself to grow and to evolve. So, as soon as we plant a seed, it begins its unidirectional journey towards a young plant, towards a tree, and towards a fruit-bearing tree, and then procreates. If the black hole, the Big Bang theory is accurate, whether a black hole is spewing matter into it, or whether that humble beginning had everything within it as a seed has, whatever the case, I don't want to go before that. From the Big Bang onwards, the universe has done only one thing: liberate itself and manifest itself, evolve and grow. That's the only thing the universe is doing. It's not doing anything else. That is what I call the fundamental property of existence. And everything is abiding by it in this realm of existence. The arrow of time is in one direction. There might be other directions in other expressions of universes, but in this one, it is in one direction. A conceived child grows into a fetus, into a baby, into a young child, whatever, into a man, a moral person, into a spiritual person. It's a unidirectional journey that existence takes. Always, always. Nothing is defying it. Nothing in the observational universe, in the one that we live in, defies this property. Intuition, therefore, is a product of our existential state. We know things before knowing. If knowing is intellectualizing, then we already know things before knowing. And the second knowing is to give it a rational expression. And we might struggle there, but we know there is a purpose. There has to be a purpose. There is something going on, but I don't know how to phrase it. So here it is. Truth is only good because it's an extension of production of greater existence. When we speak the truth and we can trust each other, that ensures the flourishing of the human community. And that is the reason why we associate truth with good, rationally. But it's only because it's steeped in intuition, and intuition is a product of our existential state. Giving life is good because giving life perpetuates life, increases productivity, liberates us, unleashes the full potential of human species to come into existence. And that is why life is sacred, because it is a feature of existence. And that is why intuition says life is sacred. But rational judgment and proposition in itself doesn't make sense unless it is rooted in intuition, which is rooted within existence. If that is understood, then we will say that yes, at the core of our beings, we know that life is purposeful. It has to make sense. There is something profound going on. At the level of us being believers, we are now faced with the inability to construct this intuition into a rational argument and express it. One thing. Second thing, we are unable to reconcile this intuition with our theology. The only option left, and as I said, it will create more questions, but by the end of the 2 days, we will be in a better position, inshallah, to understand, well, what's the nature of God and what is God, so on and so forth. We'll have a little bit better idea, more clarity in how we should be thinking and approaching the whole issue. So theology that has given us a sense of purpose, because intuitively we know there is a purpose, a profound purpose to this life. We don't know what it is. So theology supplies us with the answer. But when we begin to think, we find that actually the answers theology is giving are not convincing enough. Now, is there a problem in the theology, that the theology is not accurate? Or is there a problem in the way in which we have conceived our theology? So we have the verses and we have our understanding of the verses. For a faithful, the easier option is question our understanding of the theological texts as opposed to questioning the validity of theology if it means what Allah has revealed. But if theology means the deliberations of minds upon what God has revealed, then that theology needs to be questioned. If theology means what God has revealed, then the question is, have we understood it accurately? So we are within safe parameters. So the response is, let us re-examine our understanding of what God is saying and examine what God is saying for its own self without any assumptions upon it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His revelation talks of His speech as signs. Ayat, signs. He does not designate them as proofs. He doesn't talk of them as proofs. That could be deliberate. The verses, if they were termed as proofs, then what it would mean is that rationally we can discern them. Yes? Rationally, does this make sense? A, B, C. A lot of them are rational. Black and white. Axiomatic. There. But by and large, they are not rational proofs. Why is he doing that? Because reason operates in its own parameters of the data that is available. So, if I were to say to you that, can I see this table accurately and convey to you the nature of this table accurately, then I am curtailed to what is available by sense perception here. Yes? However, in a futuristic world, if we have mechanisms that can somehow see the aura of this table, then the perception of the aura of that table can legitimately be included within the rational argument, which cannot be today because I can't see it and you can't see it and there's no way of detecting it. Can you see that? So the rational arguments are curtailed to the knowledge that is available for one and all. What if certain knowledge is not apparently available, but it is available in a different way? That could be one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to call the verses ayat, signs. Because a sign is something that pertains to me, to the level to which I interact with it. So now, if somebody smiles at me, rationally, can I conclude that that person is happy with me? Or is this a naive assumption? Because the smile could have been generated through a thought that that person is having, in which case it is nothing to do with me. Is that a strong enough basis for me to conclude that that person is happy with me? On the other hand, what if I'm saying something that is so absurdly wrong in the mind of the listener that they smile at the absurdity of it? In which case, it means that not only they are not happy with me, they feel they're wasting their time. How much can I conclude on those things? Yet, at a personal level, if I see a smile, it's reassuring. It encourages me and it allows me to go on. If we look now at the responses that we want to give, we will see that we are looking at the verses once again. But before that, intuitively, we will discuss. Intuitively, it doesn't make sense that God brings us out of nothing, in which me and you are nothing. There is no one to pose the question to. Yes? Do you want to go to the world? Intuitively, that doesn't make sense. Because in that case, God is the most guilty of any entity conceivable. And that doesn't make sense intuitively, because God cannot be like that. Why? I don't know. But I know God cannot be like that. Can you see that? That's intuition. I know God cannot be like that. So now, rationally, supply the answer. So the answer is, well, I must have made some choices. I must have made some choices. Otherwise, the meaning of bestowal doesn't make any sense at the exclusion of me making a choice or me making a demand. It doesn't make sense that I should thank my parents, but I intuitively know that I have to thank my parents for all the sacrifices that they have given. I know I have to. So now we have to construct something rational to make sense of it. This is what we are doing right now. Intuitively, such a God doesn't make sense. Who has created us, who has brought us into this world, who has made us full of need, and then who supplies our need, and then expects us to thank Him. In fact, that doesn't make sense rationally. But intuitively, I know I have to thank Him. I know this is a favor, but rationally, I can't put it. How? So then we have other assumptions. Well, look, this is a favor. If this is a favor, then I must have made some choices. I can't remember. Why can't I remember? That's a further question. I know I have to thank my parents. Why? Because I know I have had a part to play in there, but I don't know how. Can I construct a rational argument here? Maybe, maybe not. But there is something. I know there is something. I can feel it inside me. This is not in vain. Something is happening. At least if we can open up to that something profound is happening, there is something more, then at least the journey can begin. So the verse of the Quran says, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The people who remember Him excessively, standing, sitting on their sides, reflect upon the nature of the existence of heavens and the earth. What happens at that point? There is a point of enlightenment. They exclaim. The verse carries it forward. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. O Lord, you have not created any of this in vain. There is a point of enlightenment. They begin to understand. Yes? So there is recourse. That beginning to understand through a process of reflection, through a process of remembrance, is not available for God to construct a rational argument through. All we can do here, therefore, is put further assumptions to make a case for something contrary, in the hope that we all may arrive at a point where we can construct a convincing alternative and assent to it and verify it. Yes? Okay. Now, look at the verses of the Quran, and we want to go into it in the next 2 days. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, at the end of Anfal, I believe, and indeed, we offered our trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains. In great fear and awe, they refused to bear it. وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ Man bore it. Allah then responds, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. Insan is both oppressive and ignorant. If you look at this verse and analyze it, Allah is saying, look, man is ignorant and oppressive. So why did you not withhold the man from taking this trust? It was as if God could not because he doesn't have the ability, but it's because something is happening, which we need to work out. What is happening? And what is insan? It begs the question. A further question arises, well, what is the nature of insan? Why was he predispositioned to accept it? Why couldn't God, despite knowing that he is dhaloom and jahul, prevent him? It was as if something is going on there that God, at that point, honors a particular thing that is happening. And it is something that cannot be stopped. God is saying man is ignorant and oppressive, and he has taken on something that might be to his detriment. But why isn't he stopping? This brings in another question. That if God was like a mother, per se, or father and a caring parent, he would withhold it and say to the child, you can't take this. I forbid you, or I use everything within my means to prevent you. That's what a good parent is all about, right? If a child wants to take a certain detrimental course without knowing what is at stake, the parent's duty is to restrain the child. Is it or is it not? If a 2-year-old child, yes, wants to put their hand onto the burning stove because it appears glittering and red, a good parent is supposed to withhold. Or like Moses, when the Pharaoh had this suspicion that he was the promised one, they constructed a bit of a test. And they put burning coal there that appeared bright red, and rubies. And they said, if he's a prophet, he will go for the ruby. If he's an ordinary child, he will go for the burning coal. Moses went for the Gabriel or whatever, or Moses in his state of being a child, went to the coal, put it in his mouth, and as a result, he was stuttering for the rest of his life. Yes? But a good parent should withhold the child. So now, why did God not withhold us? This then brings into the question the relationship that we have with God. Was it a parent-child relationship that we had? Or was it a relationship far more profound than that? It was far, far more profound than that. Of course, God and creation's relationship is one of parent and child, one of friend, one of master and slave, one of the superior and the subordinate. All of these things are true for God. But at this level at least, it appears that the relationship is slightly different because God is not preventing. God is saying that the heavens and the earth and the mountains realized what was at stake. Man or insan, human, realized what was at stake and still took it. And as a result, he is dhaloom, he is oppressive, and jahul, ignorant. They really don't know what they're taking on board, and yet it is their right to take it on board. That's the first thing. The verse within the Quran that states, O Lord, we hear now, we see now, return us to the world, na'mal salihah, we will perform righteous deeds. This is what people are saying after death. Allah responds, or the angels respond, oh, there is a response. No, it was a pact. God's decree has already passed. لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمْ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ, that I will fill the hell with man and jinn all together. So what is this? We remember. Sorry, what is this? We see now, we hear now, we fully understand. This then is in sync with that intuition that something profound is going on. It cannot be as lame as how I have understood it. There is something far greater. But on that day, the human is not blaming God. He is not saying to God, you sent me there, I had no knowledge of what was happening. You should have guided me. Why was it so difficult for you to guide me? But beyond that, why did you create me in the first place? You didn't even ask me. These questions are not being asked. The response the human is giving is a very different one, directly in line with our intuition today. I now understand. I hear fully. I see fully. Cause me to return so that I may do righteous deeds. So everything is understood immediately. I begin to hear now. I begin to see now. I'm not blaming you. The blame is mine. Give me a second chance. If it was exactly as we have understood, the response that the human should be giving on the day of Qiyamah is, God, I did not know anything about this. Really, I didn't. Now I understand it. So it's not fair. But that's not the response the human is giving. The human is giving a very different response. He's giving the response, I truly see, I truly hear, I realize the opportunity that I've wasted. Send me back, let me avail myself of that opportunity and perform righteous deeds. That then intrigues the mind. Well, what is happening? My intuition says there is something profound, and I am appearing to say on the last day that yes, I've become mindful of it now. Send me back. It puts the onus upon us and the blame upon us as opposed to God. So this now further clarifies that, look, there is something going on. What's going on? And that should be the real way in which life is to be led. What is going on? There's a further verse in which Allah says, يَوْمَ يَتَذَكَّرَ الْإِنسَانُ وَأَنَّ لَهُ الذِّكْرَى يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي قَدَّمْتُ لِحَيَاتِي. On the day, I'm going to obviously strike a big analogy in a little while. On the day man will say, oh, man will recollect. And to what good shall be the recollection on that day? He will cry out, if only I had prepared and sent forth for my life. Why am I going to say this? What is it that I'm not remembering now? We're going to raise the question of what is the meaning of remembrance by tomorrow, yes? So as I said, it will create further questions, but bear. These things are intriguing the mind that actually, wait, there is something very real going on here. If life is not making sense to me, then it's not at an intuitive level, it's at a rational level and a theological level, it's not making sense. The intuition is constantly biting away, eating away at me, that there is some meaning to life. There has to be something greater to life than what I've understood. We come to another verse, and these verses are all sequential, by the way, and we'll explain them later on. They're one after another. They're talking of different stages. I took a pledge from each one of the sons of Adam, sons and daughters. We're going to question the nature of being a human, by the way, and what does it mean? What's a human soul? But bear with me. And I asked them, am I not your Lord? قَالُوا بَلَى. They said, yes, you are our Lord. Now, what is interesting is not that part only. This is pre-human world existence stage. Before. Why? That's clarified by the talk that then ensues from God. So God says, least, you say to me afterwards, I had no knowledge of this. Can you see that? This is the question we're asking. Why don't I have any knowledge of it? That it's a bestowal. Least, you revert to me and say to me, I have no knowledge of this. Why then would you chastise me of something of which I had no knowledge? So God is saying, look, I'm securing this pledge from you that you will not then afterwards tell me I had no knowledge of this, so you take full ownership, the full stakeholding. You know what is at stake. You know what is going to happen. Yeah? 2, least you come back with this response, which is the second response, that Lord, I merely did what my forefathers did. Why do you punish me for what crimes others committed and the lifestyle and right and wrong that they instilled in my head from the cradle or from the cradle of culture and religion? See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is removing every excuse. 1 is, you can't say you don't know. 1. 2 is, you can't say you were conditioned by your forefathers, by the cradle of culture and religion. None of these things will hold in front of me. None of these things are going to hold in front of me. And you are making that pledge? I say, yes, I'm making that pledge. This is what God informs me in the Quran. Quran is full of these verses. Alam a'ahad ilaykum ya bani Adam an la ta'budu ash-shaytan innahu lakum aduwwun mubin. Did we not make a covenant that you will not worship shaitan? He's an open enemy for you. Where did I make that covenant? Allah therefore is intriguing and teasing and prodding at the mind. When we read these verses, to be quite honest with you, they are in line with intuition, that there is something profound that is happening. There is something at stake. I can't make sense of it, but I know there is. So the question is, the sense that I've made of it needs to be checked against intuition. So the theological texts that appear to be so empty, meaningless, have not been understood accurately. What the Quran is saying is striking at the core of our intuition, that there must be more to life than this. That's what the Quran is saying. Can you see that?